If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all my latest videos.
Well guys, welcome to Life at Gaz. It's blowing its head off today, it's gusting over 50, so we've come up here to Fleetwood Ferry where it's a bit more sheltered, and with any chance we're going to produce a couple of fish out of the channel here tonight.
So when I was setting up, I was the furthest over to the left, and the left's what direction the water comes from. Now the current here is absolutely savage, and holding the bottom is pretty much impossible if you try and cast any distance out. But to give myself a bit of extra distance, what I did with my fire rod over onto the left hand side was I essentially started upside in, where I cast a 7-ounce weight up into the channel itself, let that sink to the bottom, and then leave a big loop of line which runs all the way back up to the weight. Now this meant it's just like an anchor on a ship. It would hit the bottom, it would hold there, and then that one would stay still whilst the other rod I'd have would be out in front of me. Only fished it anywhere from about sort of 10 to 20 feet out. And to give you an idea of how much the tide pulls, you can just see that rod tip there bending round even with that big loop of line out. For the rigs today, I had 7-ounce weights on both sides. The reason for that heavy weight was only to do with the speed of the current. The anchors are what do the trick, but the weight gets that anchor right down to the bottom very quickly. Now I had a 3-hook flapper rig on both sides, and I was fishing a mix of frozen worm, squid, as well as a bit of sand eel as well. And this hopefully will be producing some fish, so stay tuned and we'll see how we do. And the nodding you can see on the rod tip just there is just that weight bouncing across the stone bottom of this channel before it finds somewhere to anchor up. Now fishing in this style, I'm looking for two distinct different types of bites. First of all, the rod which is cast up into the channel itself, if a fish takes it, I'd expect that to break the anchors and to essentially get a slack line. So if that rod tip starts bouncing like the weight's moving across the bottom, then I bring that in the hope that the fish has hooked itself. Whereas the other rod, which is out at a short distance, the rod which is on the right, I'd just expect to see small little knock bites like you would if you were fishing on the beach. Now with the lightest overhand cast possible, I ended up fishing at too much distance, so then I pulled in and changed over to just a short underhand flick, and this shows you the distance I fish at when I'm fishing this channel when it's on the flood. Now here's the first bite of the session, and it's on the rod which I've cast out into the channel, and just like expected, it was a slack line bite. Now it's not a slack line like you would see if you were fishing straight out onto the beach where the line just drops down loose. What you see is that rod tip will start wobbling and moving as that weight moves with the fish up that channel. And as you can see from the rate of retrieve, you got to bring them in fairly quick up here because they'll end up pulling across your gear into the next rod. And here's the first fish of the day, a little 5-bearded rockling which had taken the top hook. Now you can see with this fish he was foul hooked, and to foul hook a small fish like that, that reel current must have been pushing fairly fast as that fish swam past the hooks. After a bit of persuasion, the hook relieved itself and then I can take that fish back down to the water and release him into the slow tide on that channel. As soon as I reset that rod, the other rod gave it a little knock, so I picked up that one and picked up my second fish as well. And this ended up being a PB little 5-bearded rockling for me, weighing in at 5.6 ounces and 27 centimeters in length. I've never had one as big as this, and I was quite chuffed with him. Now, it didn't take long for this fish to be the biggest rockling I've ever seen, down to the second biggest rockling I've ever seen, with Stuart coming in with one which was a full ounce heavier. And there's my third rockling of the night. Now, we'd had nothing but rockling between me and Stuart. We're starting to think that's all we were going to get. But don't worry, some other species did also turn up. For those of you who watch a lot of my videos, you may notice today I'm fishing with my tripod quite low down, and the reason for this is the fact that it is so windy out there that I didn't want my rod tips right high up in the air. So because the wind was coming from behind me and there's a big bank down here at Fleetwood Channel, then if you keep your rod tips low, it tends to not have any impact on bite detection. Also, I generally fish with my rod tips low in this area as well, as there's no real need to have them up over the top of the surf. Over comes Stuart with another fish, and this was a lovely fish to see as a 1 pound 9 ounce cod caught from about 10 foot out. Then I got my chance to get my second species of the night, a tiny little rattle up on top of the rod which was just in close, and that produced a tiny little flounder. And as I was just picking a little bit of weed off of that line before unhooking this fish and putting him back, my other rod tip gave a little thump. I ran round to that one, but that bite unfortunately didn't develop. Now up until this point, me and Stuart have been picking up a steady stream of fish. We've been here for about 90 minutes and the bites were fairly constant, fairly consistent. But as soon as it went dark down there in the channel, absolutely nothing happened. It went completely dead and it took nearly an hour before we got our final bite of the night, which was over on my rod, fished up into the channel. And my final fish of the night turned out to be my third species of the night, pulling in a small whiting. This little guy was fairly deep hooked, but he did take a second or two to recover before waving his tail and disappearing off down into the channel.
Well, that's me home now after a good night's fishing up on Fleetwood channel. Now if you've liked this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button down here. Make sure you check out the latest video there and my playlist up top.